What should a Christian's attitude be towards office politics, especially for those who work in corporate settings where they can see a lot of, politicking, people using their power to get things done, and you're like, is this right for a Christian to be involved in? We'll be addressing that in today's episode of the Faith and Culture Podcast. You're welcome. Dami Oguntunde. The first thing I'd like to say about this is that the word politics is not a bad word, even though, of course, over time it has been associated with bad things like corruption, embezzlement, and bad governance and bad leadership. And so the word politics is something that we are instinctively averse to, especially in describing ourselves or anything that we're involved in, because it is almost automatically associated with corruption. But the word politics is not wrong. Politics is just how power is brokered and managed within any social context. That is, if you're able to influence somebody to do something, you have demonstrated political power. All right? The ability to influence people, systems, organizations, institutions, to carry out an objective. All right, whether it is by your persuasive skills, or it's by your communication skills, or it's by demonstrating capability to get the trust of people so you can do what you say you will do, you have become political. All right, and as long as there are human beings on this side of the divide, we will have politics. But because you think every time politics is mentioned, corruption is somewhere in there, that is why you are averse to it. You may not have the same reaction to the word influence, because you have associated influence with John C. Maxwell and leadership, because in your mind, leadership is influence, but politics is corruption. Not really, all right? Anywhere there are people that have hierarchies in authority and in power, and then there are differences in their capabilities to get things done. For example, in your organization, there are people who can, say, sign off budgets that are within a particular range, and there are designations that can sign off budgets that are higher than that range. And then the CEO can sign off perhaps the highest amount of budget. You see, wherever there's hierarchy like that, there is a cascading of power. That is, not one person has the entirety of that power centralized in himself. And that is why we have all these checks and balances in political systems and governance, so that one person does not become the arbiter of all the consummation of what power or where power rests. Now, why am I saying all of this? Just to provide a bit of desensitization, so that you do not feel like anywhere politics is mentioned, something evil, corrupt, and bad is happening. Not necessarily. In your family, you have been political. I'm sure you all grew up in families where the last born perhaps had a lot more political power than the firstborn, where the father and the mother want to do something and they know that, they don't know how to say no to this lastborn. So let us send our lastborn to go and talk to daddy and mommy, because the firstborn is always resisted typically, because the firstborn is expected to be more responsible, to do all the work, and the lastborn is a lot more pampered, softer on the lastborn, and so you know that the parents have a softer spot for the lastborn, but you need the thing, you are the one that needs it, so you tell the lastborn, you lobby the lastborn, you use your seniority to lobby the lastborn to go and achieve your own objective. You have become political that way, because you were able to recognize the person that wielded power to influence outcomes, and then you were able to influence that person that had the power to achieve the outcomes that you desired. That is politics in a nutshell. All right, the ability to influence people to achieve ends or means. And so, should a Christian be involved in office politics? You can't even avoid it. It is literally impossible. You probably got that job because of politics. Somebody in that workplace looked at you, liked you, and said, you know what, I like this person. He does not have this qualification, he may not have all the capabilities, but you know what, I like him. I think he has a good attitude. We can teach him anything that he needs to learn. And the person made a bet on you because they liked you. And the person happened to be a powerful person within the system. Now you come in and you're like, I don't want politics. So what do you mean by that? You're a product of political power. Because somebody who had power within an organization endorsed you, gave a bet on you, and said, you know what, let me be the guarantor of this person's performance. If the person doesn't perform, I take responsibility for whatever performance the person brings in. And that's to tell you that you really cannot avoid it. So people say things like, oh, there's politics in church. What do you expect? There will be. It is literally impossible, except there are no human beings in the world. As long as they are human beings and they are divergent needs, interests, desires, and we must agree on something. For plenty people to agree on something, politics must have been leveraged. How can 500 people who have different backgrounds agree on a particular line of action? It is practically impossible without the power of influence. Somebody must have said, you know what, this is what we should do. Look at what Nimrod did. Because the whole world had one language, he began to speak to them and said, you know what, I'm going to cast a vision that is going to be compelling enough that will get the buy-in of all the people of the world. We're going to build a castle and we're going to try to touch the mounts of God. And he was literally attempting to achieve that. God looked at that possibility and was like, if we don't do something about this guy and what he's trying to build, these guys may just achieve their objective. That is how powerful politics is. And that was how powerful Nimrod was in galvanizing the effort of a lot of people to achieve a certain objective. If you have ever led a charge, if you have ever led a group of people, if you have ever used your influence to achieve any objective, forget about whether it is a good objective or bad objective. You have leveraged politics. The reason why over time we have associated politics with bad governance and corruption is because most of the time the people that use their influence to achieve objectives use it to achieve selfish objectives. Objectives that do not benefit a wide range of people. They only wanted to achieve what will benefit them and them alone. And so they use political power to just achieve their own means. And that is not the kind of influence that a Christian should be party to. And so should a Christian be involved with office politics that denigrates people, that sidelines people, that takes advantage of people, that exploits people, all in the name of exalting themselves? No. But should you use your ability to communicate a vision, your ability to influence, to persuade, to get people to get on a job, to achieve objectives that are very wholesome and very laudable and noble? Absolutely. There's no way we would have had the ministry that Jesus had if he was not political. Jesus was such a good leader that they compared him to political leaders. Bible says that after Jesus spoke at some point, people looked at him and said, boy, this guy did not speak like the Pharisees. He said he spoke like one who had authority. And guess what? These Pharisees were political in their appeal. They were not just church leaders, they were political leaders. The Sanhedrin Council were a political group of people. And so we saw a Jesus that was so good at leading that people thought that this guy will do a far better job in leading the people politically than the Pharisees. That was how compelling Jesus was. He used his influence to get a lot of good done. And so should a Christian be involved in politics? Absolutely. Whether you like it or not, you're already a product of political power. And so how about you learn how to use the influence and the ability God has given you to influence people to achieve the right and noble means or noble ends, all right, as inspired by God. All right, so yes, a Christian can be involved in politics, whether in the office or in the family or in organizations or in the nation. You can leverage your influence to achieve means that make God proud. All right, I hope that answers your question. God bless your heart. Subscribe, like, comment, and see you later. Cheers.